Hi, I'm Susan Bennett Fisher, and today is What If Wednesdays. What if we could get along with our acquired family?
Yes, it'd be good to get along with our in-laws, and if you're a step parent, then wow, getting on with a step parent too is also, as a new step parent, kind of challenging. And we're going to cover how to get on better with your in-laws, how to be and accept that as a new step parent, it's going to take you a few while to get connected to your new family, both your children and your in-laws, and why.
Yes, so we're really glad that you're here today to talk with us about what it means to get along with your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, your sister and brothers-in-law, and what it's like to integrate yourself into a family, because families have family dynamics that really build up on based off of the inner relationships of the natural numbers that are reflected in that family. And so you enter a new family dynamic, your energy comes in and starts to shift and change that. And as a result, you need to understand what's my impact in this family and where and how I'm going to take this.
And for those of you that haven't met us before, I'm Martin Fisher. My natural number is 5. This is my gorgeous wife, Susan Fisher, whose natural number is 6. And what do we mean by natural number?
Natural number. There are 9 centers in our body that one of those is born active, and it shapes how you develop physiologically, how you relate to other people, how you take in information, what you care about. And it affects dramatically how we are in relationship to each other. What's our energetic signature? How do we move? How do we connect with other people? Do we value eye contact? Do we value relationship, or do we value getting things done, or transforming, or holding space? So each of us is born with a particular set of abilities that affect everything about how we interact.
And we've worked with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And one of the things that we've discovered is that we give and receive love from our natural number center. There are 3 in the head, there are 3 in the chest, and 3 in the lower body. But each of us is used to receiving love from the people around us, certainly from our parents, hopefully, and our brothers and sisters. And when we give and receive love, when we meet new people, the first thing that our body says is, wow, do I recognize how this person interacts with me? And if they interact with me in a way that is interesting to me and I'm familiar with and they feel good, perhaps I'm going to build a long-term relationship with that person. On the other hand, if that person has no natural number energy that I'm used to, no matter how much I may think they're an attractive person or they're funny or witty, I'm not going to be able to relate to them on a body-to-body level. And that means that there's a huge opportunity for us to meet new people and not ever know how to communicate with them, and also a great opportunity to not understand that the person you're with, and one of the reasons that you like them is that they feel very comfortable for you because perhaps your mother or your father has the same natural number that they do.
And what this means is we are attracted to the energies we know well. Our mothers, our fathers and sisters and brothers, or maybe a mentor. So those are where the attraction comes from. And that means we very often marry a person who shares a natural number with one of our immediate circle. What this means is they're doing the same thing, right? So Martin and I are married. He's a 5 and I'm a 6. My mother's a 1, my father was an 8, but my sister was a 5. But he's my 3rd husband. So I have actually probably been married to a 4, my other sister, and a 1 and a 5. So I've done 2 sisters and my mother. Familiar energies, ways I was used to receiving natural number, but because I was evolving as a person, I needed different things for my partner at different stages of life. And that means that if you divorce and remarry, you may not get the same natural number back into the family dynamic. So that can switch it. And then the other interesting thing, and we'll talk about both of these things in more depth, is that because my partner has also married an energy that's very familiar, that someone in his family and I have the same natural number.
And the really interesting thing that overrides all of this is that in families with children that come from those parents, the numbers don't repeat. So you and your partner don't share the same natural number. And so far, in the thousands of people we work with, the children don't share that natural number too. So if there's you, your partner, 3 kids, 5 different natural numbers. Guaranteed all to be different, guaranteed all to have a different way of being in the world. And as we've said, it's quite likely that your partner shares a natural number with one of your parents. So yes, in the traditional meme, if you will, many of us do marry one of our parents just because we're used to that number.
That energy that comes from, and that way of giving love, and that way of talking and communicating. We learn so much from our parents, right? They're our model for our belief systems. They're our model for how we receive love. They're our model for what kind of energy feels good to us. So many things come from that model of relationship with our parents. So when we choose a partner or a spouse or a significant relationship, it often has information from that past relationship. And then you have this information now in a new form, in form of your mother-in-law or your father-in-law or a sister-in-law, where somebody in that mix is going to match your natural number. And that can be really interesting. So let's start with that topic.
Yes.
Okay, so when you have an in-law who you might actually butt heads with somebody.
Yes, because there are, as we've said now many times, 9 different kinds of people in the world. We don't see many people with the same natural number hanging out together. It can be very easy to communicate because you're going to mean the same thing using the same words, and it can be quite calm.
Well, I think that depends on natural number.
I think that's true.
I think 2 5s together, absolutely, probably quite calm.
Or,
but 2 7s.
Or 2 5s together, if they're not using the same framework, can butt heads because they literally use the same words to communicate something differently. So each of the natural number pairings, obviously, every 2 people can get on, but how they get on is going to be different by the numbers that are involved. And so far, it seems that, as I said, less common for people to hang out with people with the same natural number. It's certainly possible. And there's easy parts to it, and there's more difficult parts to it. But if you look at the positional power, if you will, of a parent that has the same natural number of you that you do, of your partner, then there's a lot of things going on. Your partner now doesn't know, okay, who is the primary here? One hopes it's you. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's his parent. And so there's a lot of really interesting family dynamics that happen because the same natural number is going from different positions of power in the relationship. And that makes getting on with your in-laws sometimes really, really hard. And at the same time, if one of your in-laws has the same natural number as you do, you know that the other person...
This is very complicated. If you didn't follow what he was saying, it's very complicated.
Very complicated.
Let's keep it a little more simple. Okay, let's give us some examples.
Go for it.
We know this young woman, and she's a 7, and she is in a relationship with the same natural number as her mother, and his mother has the same natural number as her. So there's the energy match is very, they're both really used to receiving love in this way,
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
But she butts heads with the mother who's the mother-in-law who's the 7, because they're both doing the same job in the family, which is stirring things up, creating change, and making things interesting. But they may do it from a really different perspective.
And the interesting thing also is that her father-in-law, hopefully father-in-law, knows that natural number and likes her for the same reason he likes his wife, because it's a number he's familiar with. So it's a very strange and very, very complicated dynamic when all these numbers start working together.
Right.
And it explains...
And she's also come into the way the family worked together. So in this example, it's 3, 4, 6, and 7. So there's a balance, and there's 2 physical, 2 spiritual, 2 body-based, 2 in the head.
2 even, 2 odd even.
Yeah, 2 odd, even 2 odd. All those things mean something in the way the numbers interact. So when you understand, so we bring another 7 in, and now the family's out of balance. And as a result, there's confusion. The roles are not completely clear. There's been no discussion around it, and people are uncomfortable. And this causes strife when you have a new family. So learning your natural number and learning the numbers of everybody in the family is really helpful. And then actually looking at, well, what's the dynamic? How did my energy coming into this group change the dynamic in that group? And you can do that without knowing your natural number. You just know you're like which one. And then you can figure, you probably can figure it out.
Probably figure it out.
Because the one that looks like you, that moves like you, that gestures like you, they are probably the one that has the same natural number.
And the same thing applies to you when your children start having partners, because the same dynamic happens. They come into your family, and there's the same strangeness initially, and then a comfort, and then as you develop a more intimate connection with everyone in your family, the numbers are just as difficult, because that person coming in there's going to be some confusion. Why do I get on so well with one of my in-laws and not the other, for example?
Or why do I butt heads with the one that's more like me?
Yes.
Because it's not predictable necessarily.
Predictable.
You might, and so much depends on your nurture as well. So how were you nurtured well by that one that you're, by the other energy of the other parent, for example. Also, in your family, you've been the one doing that job. So for me, I'm a 6. I've been doing the 6 job in my family. Now all of a sudden, I've got a 6 partner of one of my children, and we kind of, fortunately, we get along great, and we kind of trade off the job. I like it because I can kind of give him the 6 job from time to time, and he gives it to me from time to time. So it actually works. So some situations it's going to be great. In some situations it's going to be like bam, bam, bam.
And the other dynamic here, of course, is that if you and your parents you're not getting on with that particular number, then it may be not because of you, because we often, not always healthily, connect to the same person, the people of numbers we know. But if you've been wounded by that, if you're working through your own stuff that involves that particular natural number, then you have to be a little careful not to take on the drama or the pain that you've been caused by your parent with your particular partner, and have that then go up on his side of the family. So the dynamic of human interaction is very, very complex. Obviously, thousands of books and words and hours of time have been spent talking about this.
But knowing your natural number can give you a map.
And just knowing that there is a natural number, that
right.
there are reasons behind all this stuff that aren't just sort of, well, that's the way life is.
Yeah, and people aren't just assholes. Yeah. We often interpret each other, excuse my language there, we often interpret the behavior of other people through our lens. And if you were doing that behavior, it would mean something totally different than what it means. Conversely, when you share natural number with your mother-in-law, you do have a better sense. So when people aren't behaving well, your mother-in-law might call you on your behavior. So it's really complex. But the roadmap that comes from finding out your natural number, your children, your mother, your father, your in-laws, understanding the family sheds tremendous light on what are continually those challenging areas of relationship. Who wants to be looked at in the eye? Who wants to have space? Who doesn't want a hug when you greet them? These kinds of ways of supporting and interacting with each other's very much relate to our physicality that comes from our natural number, the region of our body that's activated.
And knowing about the natural numbers helps us predict. So there are many, many less surprises. And for me, at least, one of the things I hate the most is surprises. And the more that I can predict based on this relatively well understood, now at least we understand it relatively well and we teach it, connection between people and how people interact makes life more predictable. It makes relationships more predictable. It makes interactions more predictable. And this is in no way a bad thing. One of the things that we're going to talk about now is that how did I move as a stepfather into a family that already existed? And one of the things that happens to children in these relationships, and more and more and more we're seeing blended families, what happens to children is they're used to a very different energy than the step parent most of the time. We're not particularly sure that people keep marrying the same natural number.
Yeah, we think that our initial research suggests that people try another energy out because it didn't work the first time, unless they are moving on to really try to heal within that energetic relationship. But once they figure out that they're doing that, they actually can consciously choose a different natural number.
As Susan said, I'm the third husband. She's actually my third wife. 3rd time's lucky for both of us, which is awesome. And at the same time, our partners in the past didn't have the same natural number, 6 and 5, that we have. So when I turn up in the family, Susan's children, now our children, weren't expecting my number. They had no experience of it. They had no idea who I was. They had no idea how I reacted. And as I've said before, I was very lucky to read an article in the Times that can take 18 months to 2 years or more for for new step parents to be integrated and accepted in the family. And I'm really convinced that's because the children in the family have to learn a new natural number.
Yeah.
They have to
They
know.
may not have ever been in a family before.
Not at all. Yeah.
You know, especially for second and third partners,
Yes.
you're more likely to choose something that you need at those stages in your life than something you're attracted to. We tend to gravitate towards what we're attracted to. But for Martin and I actually had a friend sit me down and say, "What do you want?" And I specifically asked for a natural number 5. I just knew that was energy that I needed in my life, and a partner that I wanted that had the attributes of natural number 5. I knew that it was right for me now, and then when he turned up as my soulmate, also returned up, it was fabulous.
We'd been friends a long time before in the long distant past.
Yes.
But just friends. So the children had no natural number 5 in their life. Mm-hmm. And they had no idea who I was. They'd been Susan and the girls, had been Susan and the girls for 7 years. And so there was a misunderstanding or even a lack of even ability to communicate with me through anything other than words, because 70, 80%, some large number of our interactions are body to body. They're not verbal. And I think a part of this is people's subconscious knows about natural numbers. Why when we identify people, there's a sense of coming home, a sense of being honored, a sense of being seen. And then this strange person walks into the house, and they had an advantage. Susan and I had known each other a lot of time in the past, so we got very close very quickly. And they didn't understand natural number 5. And to be honest, I had no idea about their natural numbers. I didn't know about natural numbers until I joined Susan. And knowing now, if I knew then what I know now, it would have been much easier, much faster, because I could have met them as they were, which probably would have confused them a little bit, but at least they would have seen that I was seeing them rather than just trying to be me. So as anyone that's joining an existing group, whether it's at work or at home, there is a chance that that group, depending how big it is, have no idea who you are.
Right. Whether it's a work group or a family group. It's also important to note that you bring a particular energy and you bring a particular way of being, and you also bring a particular set of belief systems that may or may not, that come from your nurture. So our belief systems come from a combination of our nature, your natural number, along with the nurture that you've had that has shaped and framed what comes naturally from you. And you come into a family with a set of experiences, a set of beliefs, a set of, and we had a cultural challenge on top of it, because Martin is British and me and the girls are obviously very American. And so we had cultural issues. We had his belief system of how a family should look and act and how children should behave. And then we had natural number. So the natural number allows you to, understanding the natural number allows you to sort of differentiate between the nurture and the nature, so that you aren't blaming your kids for their nature. And that's very important when somebody new comes into the family, because if they come into the family and they start to blame the kids for the nature, what's natural to them, and make that wrong, that right off the bat sets a tone for a disaster.
And if you have the children and you see them grow up, then you have a much closer dynamic and a much more intimate connection as a parent. And being a step parent, building that intimacy without knowing the natural number, without knowing how to honor that child, it's much, much harder.
Much harder.
And I think if I'd known all the things that I know now, it would have been easier for everybody in the family. Mm-hmm. And so part of our gift to the universe is that we're trying to help people make it easier. And so if you've just started in a new family, you've just become a step parent, please come get identified, come have the experience of knowing your natural number and then taking that into the family so that you can integrate. And that's faster, and that's going to be better for everybody.
With less trauma.
With less trauma. For you and the children. Because really, when you're raising children, we want to do our best. We want to raise them the best they can. And part of that is acknowledging and honoring who they are. And that means that children need to be raised differently. It is not a one-size-fits-all in any shape, size, or form.
That's very true. And parent dynamics and in-law dynamics and all these things are pretty complex. But at least knowing your natural number and having that integrated gives you a place to start, a place to understand what is our nature and what is our nurture, and how do you differentiate and how do you support that development of that nature, the core being that's in that child that is really wanting to be seen and supported. And each child of each natural number actually needs to be parented in a different way. So there's no one size fits all, and you have to learn what does this child or this child or this child need. And that was particularly challenging for Martin.
Yes.
It was one other thing I wanted to say about you coming in, having your ideas of how things should be, and then it not being that way. It'll come back to me.
And there's always the element of when any of us join as a step parent, we're bringing our nature as well as our nurture. And our nurture.
Oh, that was it. Thank you.
Doesn't always guide us the best way.
Well, the other piece is what you as part of your natural number do a particular function, you perform a particular function. And that function had never been performed in our family before you came. There was no planning. There was no big picture. There was no paying attention to other people's needs. All the things that are classic to 5, you brought into there, and we're all like, what is he doing? Why is he doing that? We didn't understand what was going on. And then Martin has a particular drive to take care of each person. And when all 3 daughters and me at the same time were all going off and needing something, it was just overwhelming to him. So his tendency would be to remove himself and take his 5-ness out of the equation. And we'd all go, Martin, come back. Where did you go? And then he would just get upset. And so recognizing that what you bring is actually important. When you take it with you, it's not a neutral. And if it's new to a dynamic, it has to be put in the context of that dynamic.
And it's worth having that conversation with your partner.
Absolutely. And the children.
Yes, depending on their age, but certainly getting to a place with your partner where you can explain the dynamic. So again, children, I don't believe, want excitement or surprises any more than adults do. So
I think that depends on your natural number. I love excitement and challenges and surprises.
I'll remind you of that next time. Yes.
Well, I guess so. I like good ones.
Yes, and good is in the eye of the beholder to some extent.
Yes, there is that too. Well, I think that's probably enough for today. It just feels like we've hit the go.
Stay with us next week. We'll be having more conversation about natural number.
And family.
See us at bodyof9.com. If you want, or soon, if you'd like to get identified, mynaturalnumber.com.
Yeah, or you can get there from Body.
Get there from Body of 9. We will be posting this on the Body of 9 group, just in case we're on the wrong group right now, which is not impossible. And we look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks for tuning in.